digital. Hello, everyone. We are here at an exciting time for Europe as it looks to a new beginning, building on its achievements of the last 5 years under a new administration.
We are honored and pleased to give you a warm welcome to the Digital Assembly 2019.
I'm Ralica Vasilova. For many years, I was an anchor on CNN International, and I still use my journalism skills for important events like this one.
I'm Mihai Constantin. I'm the Romanian national public television presenter. And also, I'm quite passionate about how digital transforms our everyday lives.
And I think, Mihai, you're in the right place, because in the next 2 days, we will explore how to make the most of digital technology for Europe's bright future.
And this is not an easy task, because from the many angles we could have taken, we chose 4 main topics.
That's right. Beginning with Digital4Planet, which deals with technology's impact on the environment.
Then, Digital for Leadership, that is about making Europe a global leader in key technologies.
Digital for Jobs, which responds to the changing nature of work. And you know, Mihai, I have a story to tell, but you have to stay till the end to hear it.
And I have nowhere else to be until tomorrow
right.
afternoon. So, last but not least, Digital for Communities, that envisions smart solutions throughout the continent, but from the local perspective.
And all of Europe's biggest challenges need all of us to contribute according to our individual strengths.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the European Commission and the Romanian presidency of the EU Council have planned for you 2 days of lively debates with representatives from the world of politics, academics, businesses, and civil society.
And, of course, we're also expecting feedback from you, our esteemed audience, on Slido.
Very well to remind me, because I have to instruct our audience. I hope you all know what Slido is. So it's quite easy. Take out your smartphones, open your browsers, go on slido.com, put there the code that you're going to see on screen. We have a code for every session, so 4 codes for all the 2 days, and we'll start for the Digital4Planet code, and that's it. You can ask questions to our panelists, you can answer our inquiries, and vote throughout Digital Assembly 2019.
And so, we're ready to get started.
Absolutely. I now invite on stage for the official opening remarks and the first keynote address, Minister of Communications from Romania, Mr. Alexandru Petrescu.
Welcome.
What a great view. Thank you, Ralica. Thank you, Mihai. What a lovely crowd. Thank you very much. Dear Commissioner Mariya, Gabriel, dear Commissioner Neves Mimica, dear colleagues, welcome to the Digital Assembly, the flagship and high-impact major European event organized by the Romanian presidency together with the European Commission. I am delighted to see such an impressive participation from so many different areas of activities, from government, industry, academia, research and innovation community, startups and SMEs, students, young people and even teenagers, sharing the same passion and the same desire to embrace the fantastic opportunities, knowledge and changes brought up by the new advanced technologies. We are determined to fully embrace digital with lots of brilliant digital inventive minds, with startup founders with lots of scale-up experience and a strong academic community carrying out deep tech research. We can say we have our own rich heritage when it comes to technology. A high number of Romanian students are graduating from tech universities, Romania ranking the 6th among EU member states with 4.9% to all graduates. As a committed and active European partner for digital single market and for digital economy and society, Romania has joined all the European initiatives in this area by signing the ministerial declarations on cooperation on connected and automated cars, artificial intelligence, blockchain, high-performance computing, women in tech, digital for cultural heritage, digital agriculture. Together, we can pool resources to accelerate digital developments in key areas that can bring tangible benefits for all citizens and companies everywhere across Europe. In 2019, at the age of a new beginning, Digital Assembly looks more promising than ever. It has the potential to provide the most useful guidelines and solutions, and it can be considered a strong and solid foundation for the future of digital Europe. The 4 topics chosen to frame the discussion during these 2 days, Digital4Planet, Digital for Leadership, Digital for Jobs, and Digital for Communities, open many doors and allow us to touch upon all the remaining challenges for our digital single market and to spur the debate on the next policies necessary to adapt and update it on economy and on society. Under the very well-known motto, borderless and transformative digital Europe, Romania has worked intensively towards further achieving our common goals for a strong, competitive, and innovative digital single market, being strongly attached to the European values and principles, including the high quality of legislative act. Last week in Luxembourg, the TTE Council that I had the honor to chair has adopted a directive on open data and reuse of public sector information, a measure which will boost EU data economy and will have a major impact on the competitiveness and the development of the new advanced technologies in Europe. We have achieved a common understanding on the first ever Digital Euro program, the most important financial instrument for investments in the IT&C sector for the next multi-annual financial framework. Building up capacity and increasing capabilities when it comes to cybersecurity has been one of our main priorities. This includes the tremendous work of the Romanian presidency at the legislative level on the regulation establishing the European Cybersecurity Competence Center that will provide special support for SMEs to facilitate their access to knowledge and training and to allow those who are active in cybersecurity to contribute to the Union's leadership in this particular field. The competitiveness and the economic development of Europe depend on its capacity to embrace, deploy, and integrate the advanced technologies, such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, 5G, high-performance computing, in an environment that provides for level playing field, data protection, confidentiality of electronic communication, cybersecurity, and trust. Therefore, the Romanian presidency launched a thorough and comprehensive ministerial debate on the future of a highly digitized Europe beyond 2020 to set out the vision on the perspectives and challenges ahead towards the global leadership position of Europe in the essential aspects of digitalization. The TTE Council on the 7th of June has adopted the conclusions on the future of a highly digitized Europe beyond 2020, boosting digital and economic competitiveness across the Union and digital cohesion. This very important document stipulates that digitalization is essential for the competitiveness, economic development, cohesion, and security of Europe. I believe that this year's edition of Digital Assembly will bring a substantial added value to our efforts for a strong and competitive digital single market, including the development of connected, interoperable intelligent applications and services for the smart cities and communities and their citizens and companies. Last but not least, I would like to thank the European Commission for being our partner in organizing this major flagship event, and I would like to thank in particular Commissioner Gabriel for all the support during our presidency. Also, I would like to congratulate the EU-Africa Digital Economy Task Force for the amazing report presented this morning. I believe it is very important and at the same time fruitful to integrate the digital in all our international partnerships. Thank you very much, and I wish you successful debates and brainstorming sessions. More clicks, less bricks.
Thank you. And now I invite our keynote speaker for today, European Commissioner for Digital Economy and Society, Mariya Gabriel. Welcome to the stage. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Ralica. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Alica. Thank you, Mikhail. Minister Petrescu, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 Digital Assembly, which is a major event organized by the European Commission together with the presidency of Romania. I would like to welcome and congratulate the Romanian President of the European Council and Special Minister Petrescu for the excellent cooperation that we've had over the entire past 6 months. I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and I'm proud to be able to say that together we have come a long way, and that we are now ready to move forward even further. Yes, a digital Europe and a strong digital economy is the foundation we need for sustainable growth in the European Union. And this is why we need to embrace digital transformation, but we need to do this while maintaining what we've already achieved in Europe. Digital transformation is not an end unto itself. Technological progress must obey one single target and goal, and that is to serve the welfare and prosperity of our people. And therefore, the response that we are giving to these challenges is that we wish to offer a wide array of services which are competitive and which allow small and medium-sized businesses to provide services and products that do not bring them up against too much regulation and bureaucracy. It's very important to simplify, for example, VAT rules for our businesses. We must have an improvement of cybersecurity in the future, and we must also maintain trust in the online environment. That is what the digital single market is. It is a market that reinforces European competitivity. I'm sure that you know better than I do which details are involved in all these different initiatives. Nevertheless, let me say that what is essential here is to ensure that in this intensive debate, we now have reached a situation where better remuneration is achieved for workers, where we have better conditions for European tourism and travelers. We have better conditions at European borders, and we can now say that European approach has been achieved on almost all digital fronts, because it's only by working together that we can regain the leadership that we need on the international scene, and that is what Europe deserves. But that is not all that we have to do. Rather, the digital single market is a solid basis to build on for the future. We now have to consolidate that basis, and we need to ensure that this consolidation responds to the digital transformation that's before us, which is becoming more and more rapid. Today we must move forward and draw up new legislation where it is necessary. And this is something that the new Commission will have to do as well. But it's also important that you express yourself here today, because this assembly is a forum where we wish to listen to each other and to hear the civil society side as well as that of the other participants. Also, I believe that a very important aspect of our debates for the future is precisely this aspect of listening to each other. Ladies and gentlemen, we're up against great challenges in Europe in our transition towards the digital market and economy. Therefore, we must strive to achieve inclusion of all our citizens. That has to be our priority today and in the future. And there are at least two reasons for this. First of all, because inclusion is the core of our fundamental values, of our common European values, as well as the protection of fundamental rights, quest for a more just and a fairer society in which everyone is included in the European dream, no matter where they come from. And this is a very important political goal, because if we don't include everyone, we will not have a successful transition towards a society of knowledge, and we won't be able to achieve sustainable growth in the years to come. Now, if we realize that there is a need for inclusion, then of course we still have to figure out how to implement that inclusion in practice. Our citizens are the alpha and the omega of my political commitment, and this is where I start from. I ask myself, what can we do in order to give everyone the same opportunities with respect to the digitalization of our economy? There are various ways we can go in, various directions we can set out in order to construct a society of equal opportunities. First of all, to develop digital infrastructures. Secondly, to develop digital competence and skills. And thirdly, to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to inform themselves. These are the three fronts I want to fight on, and we will talk about them in the various panels in the framework of this assembly. With respect to the digital infrastructure, our European approach is based on a balance between regulatory action and targeted investment. We wish to achieve a fair strategy which is in the interest of our citizens. We wish to work together in a framework of fair competition without too much legal regulation. Here, the Commission has made some emblematic steps forward, especially by abolishing roaming costs. We believe that this is a healthy way to move forward, and also a way to encourage investors. There's some very specific examples here. The telecode code is very important for the development of infrastructures, and it is based on the provisions for rural areas that we can move forward and make sure that telecom coverage is ensured for all areas, including the rural areas in our countries. We believe that this is a very specific way of making sure that we provide access to everyone. Digitalization, of course, is a great challenge for infrastructure, but at the same time, looking at the legal aspects is not enough, even though it's a very efficient way of moving forward. I am convinced that targeted investments must be based on an effective synergy, and I believe it will also lead to a virtuous cycle.
a tenu parole sur le plan d'investissement.
The Commission has
335
therefore
milliards
focused
d'euros ont
on
été
this
mobilisés par le Fonds européen pour les
investment program.
investissements stratégiques, soit 20 milliards de plus que
335
l'objectif imparti.
billion have
Mais
been
entendons-nous bien,
earmarked for this, even
d'autres
more
États,
than was
tels que les
envisaged
États-Unis et la Chine,
originally.
ont
And
pris une avance marquée,
of course, we know
notamment
that
dans le domaine
China
de
and the United
l'Internet.
States are
Donc notre réaction,
ahead
elle doit être
in this
vigoureuse.
area. Therefore,
Et
we
je me suis
must
personnellement
concentrate
engagée à
on catching
construire
up
les fondements d'une Europe
and work
plus
very
assertive, plus
intensively
consciente
on
et par
building
là
up a
même
more
plus
assertive
confiante en
and
ses atouts.
confident
C'est
Europe.
donc dans cette logique que j'ai
And therefore, it's
proposé
in
et
this
nous avons
direction that we need
obtenu
to go, and that is
l'introduction
why
d'un programme
I have
focalisé sur le numérique
proposed a
dans les
program
perspectives
which is
financières
focused on
pluriannuelles en
digital
discussion.
aspects, and it's also
Notre
part
joyeux de la
of
couronne,
the upcoming
à savoir
multi-annual
le programme
financial
Europe
framework.
numérique.
And
9 milliards
this
d'euros
is
pour
our
un programme
program for
qui
Digital
facilitera la
Europe.
mise en œuvre des
It has a
technologies
budget of 9
innovantes.
billion euros, and
Il
it's
sera le
based
catalyseur
on
de nos programmes de
innovative
recherche
technologies.
Horizon
It will be the
2020 et
catalyst
son
for our
successeur
research
Horizon
program,
Europe. Merci
and
encore à la
will be the
présidence
successor
romaine
to the
d'avoir
Horizon Europe program.
mené
Thanks once
ensemble
again
avec nous
to the
ce
Romanian
débat jusqu'au
presidency
bout. Je
for
parle de prise de
having
conscience et de réaction
engaged
vigoureuse
in this debate with
car
us.
derrière
I've been
toute
saying that
réussite,
this is such an important
il y a des
topic
choix
because we
volontaires
must be successful, but at the
qui
same
sont
time, behind
toujours
success,
assortis
you also
de
have
défis.
always have voluntary
C'est
choices.
maintenant aux États
They in
membres de se
themselves
prononcer.
are also a
Je te
challenge,
conseille de donner à l'Europe
and therefore
les
we
moyens
now
de
need to
répliquer le
give
succès
Europe
Euro-HPC
the means
de la
it
semaine
needs
dernière sur des sujets tels que la
in order to
cybersécurité,
move forward
les
in
ordinateurs
areas such
quantiques
as
ou encore la
cybersecurity,
santé
quantum
numérique.
computers, and even digital health.
Mesdames et messieurs, au-delà des
Ladies and
infrastructures,
gentlemen, above and beyond,
donner des chances
infrastructure,
égales dans un environnement
providing
numérique
equal opportunities in a
et
digital
bien
environment
entendu, cela passe
is
par la diffusion des
a very
compétences
important
numériques
goal,
de
and
base.
this, of course, must be
Je
based
tiens
on
sur ce point
conveying
à saluer le
basic
travail de
digital
la Digital
skills and
Job
competence.
Coalition,
Therefore, the digital
dont le
skills and
travail est crucial au moment où 90%
coalition
des métiers de l'avenir
is a very
demandent
important
des
initiative,
compétences numériques de base,
reaching out to
alors qu'en ce moment
90%
même,
of the professions of the future.
44% des Européens
And
n'ont pas ces compétences numériques de base. Donc
of course,
donner à
this is because
chaque
there's so many
Européen,
Europeans who still do not
jeunes
have
et
basic
moins
digital
jeunes,
skills,
la
and they're the
formation
ones we need to
nécessaire
reach
pour
out to,
s'orienter
and
dans un
we
monde
need to give
numérique est
all of our
essentiel.
European citizens
Je crois dans
the
les
skills that they need
initiatives
in order to be
pragmatiques,
able to find their
telle
way
la Semaine
in the
européenne
new
du
digital
code, qui
environment.
cette année a touché un nombre record de participants,
This year,
2,7 millions
We
d'Européens
had
et au-delà de l'Europe.
2.7
Tout
million
ceci
Europeans
à
and even
travers de
people
dizaines de
outside
milliers
Europe
d'événements
participating
locaux.
in our events
Et ici,
last week,
un petit mot, un petit message
this
de
area,
remerciement et de soutien.
which I'm very proud of.
Je suis
And
bien
here,
consciente du
let
rôle
me just
capital
also say
joué
that
par
I'm
les
very
enseignants en la
much
matière.
aware of the
Et je les assure que je suis
important role that
déterminée à les
teachers
soutenir
play
par tous les
in
moyens
this
à
whole
notre
context,
disposition.
and I would like to offer them
Donc ces manifestations organisées au
every
plus près
support
des
that we can give
citoyens
them.
ont le pouvoir de les toucher sans discrimination.
We want to
La
support our
semaine du code
citizens
qui a
and
touché
without any
46%
sort
de
of
filles est
discrimination.
un excellent exemple en la matière.
Last week we were
Vous
able to
connaissez
reach
mon
out to
engagement
many
sans faille
young
sur
women
ce
and
sujet,
girls, and you know
parce
that
que
I'm
nous
very
n'obtiendrons
committed
jamais une
to
Europe
precisely
numérique
this
inclusive
aspect, because we'll never have
sans
an
la pleine
inclusive digital
participation
Europe
des femmes.
if women
Mais
don't take
l'égalité
full
entre
part in
les hommes et
it.
les femmes ne doit pas être
Equality
l'arbre
between men
qui
and
cache
women,
la forêt.
however, cannot
Je
be
n'ignore rien des
the
difficultés qui peuvent être rencontrées par certains
tree that hides the
citoyens
forest.
pour des raisons multiples. Soit parce
And there
qu'ils sont
are
peu
many
formés, soit parce qu'ils
reasons
ont été
why
formés par
people
le
may
passé,
not be moving
travaillent
forward,
déjà,
maybe because
ou
they
encore parce qu'ils
have
sont
not had enough
plus âgés.
education or because
À cet
they're
effet,
already elderly.
il nous faut
Therefore, we
davantage
need to offer
d'actions
them all
spécifiques.
our support, and this
Nous
has to be
avons
based on
l'exemple de
targeted
upskilling
initiatives.
pathways.
We have
Mais nous avons
examples
besoin
of
de
upskilling
plus.
pathways,
Le
but we
but
need more than
de ces
that.
parcours est simple.
And the target
Apporter à chacun,
of all of these
via des compétences,
projects has to be the same,
des
and that is
véritables
to
moyens
convey competence
pour que
and
la
even
personne
more than that,
puisse vivre avec
skills
son
and
temps,
the means that
et
people
pour que
need in
surtout
order
que
to
chacun puisse
live in this day and
bénéficier
age
des avancées qui
successfully
facilitent le quotidien
and
au
in order
travail,
to
mais
facilitate
aussi
their
dans la
daily
vie
life
privée.
at home and on the job.
Mesdames et messieurs,
ladies and
outre les
gentlemen,
infrastructures et les
above
compétences,
and beyond these
j'aimerais rappeler aujourd'hui
infrastructures
que
and
l'égalité des
skills,
chances à
it's
l'heure
also
de la
important to remember that
numérisation
equal
passe
opportunities in
aussi
the
par
age of
la capacité de
digitalization
tous
must also be
à
based
faire des choix
on
informés.
our ability
Or,
to make informed
vous n'ignorez
choices.
rien des menaces que fait peser la désinformation sur notre démocratie.
Disinformation is a
Dans un
great
monde
threat
qui
to our
va
democracies,
toujours plus vite,
as we all know, in
il
a world
importe d'avoir
which
un
is
accès
moving forward
rapide à
more and more
l'information.
quickly and in
Or,
which there's more and more
toutes les
access to
sources ne se
information.
valent pas et nous ne sommes pas
We
tous
obviously
égaux
realize that not
face
all
à ce
sources of
fléau.
information are the same,
Je me suis
and
engagée dans cette lutte
it's
par
very
conviction,
difficult
car la
to
désinformation érode la
fight
confiance de nos
disinformation, but it's
concitoyens
something
dans
that
les
I'm very committed
institutions
to because
et dès lors
it is a
dans
scourge
notre démocratie.
against our citizens
c'est un
in our
message
institutions
positif
and in
que
our
j'aimerais partager
democracies.
avec vous
But I
sur
have
ce
a
sujet.
positive message that I'd like to share
Parce
with you
que
on this topic.
La dernière année,
Because last
des
year,
mois intenses, nous avons été capables de montrer que oui,
we
une réponse
were
européenne
able to show that we
construite
do
par nous
indeed
tous
have a European
est possible.
answer to this
Et une
problem, that we
réponse sur plusieurs
can give
tableaux.
one if we
En
give it
soutenant le
together.
journalisme de qualité,
And we can do so, for
en
example,
contribuant à la mise en réseau
by
de
supporting quality
vérificateurs de faits,
journalism, by
en
setting
travaillant
up
main dans la main dans
a
les secteurs
fact-checking network,
pour qu'on puisse
and
avoir un code de bonne pratique,
by setting up a good
unique,
practice
mais qui
code.
apporte des résultats,
This was a very
en
important
menant des
initiative which has
actions
led to good results.
d'éducation aux médias.
And
Je
by
suis
doing
fière de la
media
première
education,
édition de
I'm
notre
very
Media
proud
Literacy Week
of our
qui s'est
first
tenue au mois de
Media
mars
Literacy Week,
cette même année.
which took place in
Et
March of
enfin,
this
en
year.
soutenant à travers différents
And
projets et mesures
finally,
réglementaires
we've also
un
supported
environnement des médias
various
libres et pluriels.
projects based
Demain, nous, la
dedicated
Commission,
to
nous allons tirer
free
un
media
premier bilan de ces actions.
and information.
Mais notre sentiment
In the
est
near
que ces
future, we'll
actions
be
ont permis d'avoir
giving
des
an
élections
overview
européennes
of
exemptes de
this activity within the
macro-campagnes de
European Commission.
désinformation à
During the
l'échelle
European election
européenne.
campaign, we saw how much
Nous allons continuer à avoir des
disinformation was
analyses plus
conveyed
détaillées
on a European
parce que
level.
nous voulons être au
This is
point
something
des technologies qui
we must
évoluent
learn to deal with
extrêmement
because,
vite.
of course, here we're dealing with
Mesdames et
technologies
messieurs,
which are evolving
pour
so
conclure,
quickly that it's
Nos
difficult
actions
to
pour
manage
mettre
them.
l'économie numérique à la
In
portée de
conclusion,
tous
ladies and gentlemen,
passent par
we
l'accès
want
à l'infrastructure, aux compétences digitales
to have
et à
digital
une
access
information
for everyone,
libre,
which is based on
plurielle
the necessary
et exempte de
infrastructure
désinformation.
and
En ce
the freedom
sens,
of choice
le
with
secteur
respect to
numérique
information
est
sources.
éminemment porteur de
Therefore,
promesses.
the digital
Mais il n'en
economy
demeure pas moins permis
is very
de porter un
promising,
regard
but at the
nouveau,
same time,
un regard
we must
ambitieux sur les
be
défis européens de
careful
demain,
and make
au
sure that
service
we understand
desquels
the
le
risks
secteur
and threats that we're up
numérique
against in the future
pourrait se mobiliser
and make
davantage.
sure that the
Je
digital
pense en
economy moves
particulier à
forward
l'environnement
in the right way. Here
ou
I'm thinking
encore
above all of the
à la santé.
environment and the health
En
sector.
définissant, en adoptant et en dirigeant
By
la transformation
defining
numérique,
and adopting
nous
and
contribuons à ce que le
guiding
numérique
digital
renforce
transformation,
nos
we can
citoyens,
ensure that
renforce nos
the
entreprises
digital economy reinforces our
ceci
citizens, strengthens our
en
societies and
pleine
economies,
correspondance avec
and
nos valeurs
does
communes.
so in
C'est ainsi que je vois le leadership européen,
full communion with
Ensemble,
our
avec des valeurs
basic principles.
et
And I'm
l'homme
sure that we can do
qui
this
est aux commandes du processus.
based on our values
Je vous remercie
and
de nous
based
avoir accompagnés dans ce chemin des
on
dernières années.
human beings
Et je vous
themselves, which are the
remercie
focus of all of our
chaleureusement
action. Thank you
de la
very much
force
for
et de
being here
l'énergie
today.
que vous allez y
Thank you for the
mettre
energy and the
au cours
force
des
that you're bringing
prochaines
to the work
pour
that we
qu'on
have to do
puisse
here together
réellement passer
so that
de la base
we can
et des
truly
règles
move
et de l'esquisse
on
à la
to
consolidation,
the
à la
consolidation
réalisation,
and
au
realization
bénéfice et au leadership. C'est vous tous
of
qui incarnez tout cela
leadership
et je vous
and
remercie du fond
prosperity.
du cœur.
This is
Merci
something
beaucoup.
which I'd like to thank you all for from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Great two opening and inspirational speeches. So again, thank you, Minister Petrescu. Merci beaucoup, Commissioner Gabriel.
Thank you
for
very
these
much, Commissioner
opening,
Gabriel.
remarks. Well, at every digital assembly, we have our minds set to the future. But I think for the Digital Assembly 2019, it is equally helpful and useful and necessary to look at all we have achieved over the last 5 years. And here it is in a nutshell.
5 years ago, the Juncker Commission made the digital single market one of its key political priorities. Different national rules and incompatible member state services confined consumers to less choice with higher prices and hampered businesses from scaling up. Now, the market has common rules, opening up countless opportunities for European citizens and businesses. Expensive calls and data within the EU are over. We can call and surf the web anywhere in Europe without roaming or excessive international charges. We can access content subscriptions, movies and sports, or buy online from anywhere in the EU, and even snap up a bargain from another European country. Unjustified geo-blocking is banned. As consumers, we are better protected when we don't receive the product we ordered or when digital services do not work. Our children can surf and watch videos more safely online, and we can all watch more European movies. European creativity is also protected by new copyright rules. Personal data is now secured to the highest standards set by Europe. Safeguards against cyber attacks apply across Europe, and agencies act together to better protect us. EU companies can reach over 500 million consumers through common rules, efficient one-stop VAT options, and guaranteed free data flow through the cloud service of our choice. Digital platforms must give companies fair access to do business and take measures to protect users from disinformation. And there is more to come. Europe is investing in digital infrastructure to make the best of the data economy, supporting green and intelligent transport, clean and efficient energy, e-health, precision farming, cultural heritage, education, and climate action. Today, Europe is leading the way in the digital world. Its rules are becoming world standards and are a strong foundation for a digital global leadership in the years to come.
And we're now excited to introduce the first plenary session dedicated to the environment. We call it Digital4Planet. And this session is divided into two parts, Digital4Climate and greening ICT. It's a hot topic for Europeans, both young and old.
Ralița, I think there is no secret that maybe this session is mostly addressed to those who do not think the environment is a hot topic. You'll be hearing some arguments to change your mind and force all of you into action.
But Mihai, a lot of people are already being very concerned. We saw the Greens make a lot of gains during the recent European Union elections, and we've also seen young people on the streets of Europe calling for immediate action. So what role can digital technology play in the sustainability transition? That is the topic of this session.
And maybe it's high time to stress that information and communication technology, ICT, and the environment are influencing each other maybe more than we envisioned some time ago. But also there is a lot of potential for one to support the other.
However, it's complicated, like everything in life. On the one hand, technology has an enormous potential to mitigate climate change. But on the other, it also needs to reduce its own carbon footprint.
It's definitely complicated, but not impossible, as you will hear some example from Mr. Roberto Viola, the Director General of DG Connect, and of course from more of our panelists.
Studies showed that technology contributes positively to 11 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG, on health, innovation, and sustainable cities and communities.
Well, that's the positive part, but at the same time, technology grows more and more power-hungry and poses a threat to the SDG on responsible production, for example, or responsible consumption.
So, Mihai, let's see if our panelists can come up with ideas on how to maximize the pros and minimize the cons of digital impact on sustainability.
Well, and it is my job throughout the Digital Assembly to remind you that this is an event that you are encouraged to take out the smartphones out of your pockets and interact with us. We have Slido and we want to use it, so get ready to do that.
And we now welcome Roberto Viola, Director General of Communications Networks, Content and Technology, to open session Digital4Planet. Welcome.
Welcome, sir.
Dear Commissioner, dear Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it's for me a great pleasure to start the working part. After such inspirational speeches, I'm sure you are very motivated now to start working this Digital Assembly, and I have the honor to introduce the first section. And I do this speaking about towels to you. You know, there's a little sign when you enter an hotel room, the bathroom, that says, try not to use too many towels. It is for the environment. And we always suspect that maybe also it's good for the hotel, not just for the environment, but we understand this is important. What about if in the hotel room you would find a sign that says, don't charge your smartphone. It's good for the environment. I'm sure you would panic, because I think in the modern times, one of our highest scare is not to have our beloved smartphone with us, not to have the backup of our data, isn't it? Well, but this is the dark side of the story, because if you care for the environment, I think we should be aware that all this beautiful digital technology, it's really consuming a lot of power. When you take the energy bill of data centers in Europe, it has almost doubled in the last 5 years, and it will go even higher. And when you take phone charging, TVs, when you take all sorts of digital devices that are making our life smarter and smarter, when you take the enormous data centers, the computing centers, they make everything a little bit more safe and simple, altogether, in few years, will be nearly 50% of the energy consumption of the world. So I think this is something that needs to be factored in when we think about all the important, and I underline important advantages of the digital society. And what about recycling? Digital waste amounts to millions and millions of tons of unused material which is not recycled. Today, digital recycling is less than 18% of the overall electronics which is being consumed. And this is a generous figure. So this is another very, very scary figure that I'm giving to you. So power-hungry devices, devices that cannot be recycled, this is not really the good start for digital to go green. There's more to be done, more to make sure we have power-efficient data centers. We are aware as consumers what are our options to go green when using smartphones, how to recycle, how to make the lifetime of devices longer. This is really important. But let me also introduce, and I'm sure the distinguished panelists will discuss about this, the good side of digital. So one part is on the dark side of the force, but there's also a good part. Through digital, we can understand much better our Earth. We can understand much better how our climate works. We have just announced that Commissioner Gabriel has said the crown jewels of Europe, our 8 crown jewels, which are the new supercomputing grid for Europe, 3 days ago, we selected the key locations, and we are going to deploy the largest and most powerful computing grid of the world. We want these supercomputers to work for the climate, to work for understanding better modeling, understanding better how to use our Earth in terms of, for instance, agriculture, in terms of how to better make use of what comes out of the sea, and to be more sustainable. Through satellite images, to drones, through many other sensors, we have zillions and zillions of data available. We now also are increasing our computing power. Altogether, this makes a team that will allow us to understand more. And the same applies to agriculture. By understanding better with precision agriculture, using artificial intelligence, how to exploit the soil, we can be much more attentive when it comes to environmental friendly agriculture, growing and making sure that this is spread all over the world. And the same applies to water supply. In some time, 70% of water supply is wasted. Through IoT sensors, to monitoring water flow, we can significantly reduce the waste of water during the supply. So the list of examples where digital can help is really long. And the list of things we have to do to make digital more green is also long. So I do hope that our distinguished keynote speaker and our panelists will enlighten us on how to create a solid agenda in order to have a better digital experience and a better planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Viola, for this first intervention in Digital Assembly 2019. Well, Ralica, we promised the audience that we are going to force them into action. Well, I hope we weren't too ambitious, but there are studies that have been made that decided that actually rational decisions are taken emotionally from the heart. Let's use that.
I think that's a better use of our time, and it's very timely because we're just about to show you a video where you will hear from two climate activists that have inspired millions around the world with their passion for the environment. Let's hear what they have to say.
Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon.
We still have an open window that is not going to be open for long, in which we can act, so we need to take that opportunity to do something.
Climate change is one of the key challenges of our time. Action is needed urgently. To achieve the Paris Agreement goal to limit a global temperature rise, the Commission has proposed that the EU be climate neutral by 2050. Digital technologies have huge potential to address climate challenges, be they big data and artificial intelligence, Earth observation space technologies and network of sensors without batteries, the so-called Internet of Things, blockchain-managed supply chains, virtual technologies that will provide services without the need of material, such as music, low-power processors. Digital technologies can promote material reuse for a circular economy, improve air and water quality, and even protect biodiversity. At the same time, the environmental footprint of digital technologies, and in particular data centers, is increasing fast. All this raises important policy questions. Where to invest? What rules and standards will set the right incentives across Europe and the world? How to use Europe's strengths in sustainable technologies and industries for sustainable prosperity? how to help citizens choose more sustainable products and services. One thing is clear. We need to act now and together, transforming common sense into common practice.
We hope we'll hear more of these arguments from our next speaker because he has immense experience as ex-Commissioner of the Environment, but also through his current work at the United Nations.
That's right. So to describe briefly the environmental challenges posed by climate change and the lack of circularity of our economy, we welcome to the stage Janez Petrovic.
Mr. Janez Potočnik.
Potočnik.
Welcome.
Let's get the slides, please. Minister, Commissioner, Digital4Planet, finally. So, environmental and digital community might not speak the same language, but we have the same challenges. And it's essential that we understand the urgency of those challenges. Maybe just before starting, some basic facts in which world we are living. In 4 years, we will have additional population of United States of America on the planet. Climate scientists have put 12 years on the clock that we stay inside the 1.5 degrees. 60% of life, biodiversity, has disappeared in the last 40 years. Half of the cities which will exist on the planet in 2050 have not yet been built. China has used in 3 years more cement than the United States of America during the whole 20th century. In 1 minute, we are buying 1 million plastic bottles globally. 9% recycled, 12% incinerated, 80% almost ending in environment. But let me start the story this time about the urgency with somebody you might know. It's from my home country. It's actually the philosopher Slavoj Žižek, who a few days ago nicely said it's clear that we are approaching the ecological and digital apocalypse, but we should not lose nerves. And he was actually continuing by quoting Mao Zedong, who was saying everything under the heaven is in utter chaos. The situation is excellent. So what is the real difference today from the generation before of us? We are the first generation who is living in socio-ecological space of planetary scope. My father was still using a horse to travel to the next village. We are now interconnected, interdependent, and our responsibility, individual and collective, for protecting the planet has enormously increased. The Club of Rome has nicely put it that we have moved from so-called empty world, which was dominated by nature, to a full world which is dominated by humans. In the empty world, it was labor and infrastructure which were the limiting factors of human well-being, while now it is natural resources and environmental things which are the limiting factors of our human well-being. Normally we do a simple mistake. All of us talk, and rightly so, about the state and impact which are basically biodiversity loss, climate change. But if you really want to deal with those problems, you need to talk about the drivers and pressures. And if you say drivers and pressures, you have basically said humans and human activity. So there is no way to deal with climate change and biodiversity loss without fundamentally changing the production and consumption model. That leads us to something which I'm chairing, International Resource Panel. Resource use is actually creating a kind of bridge between economy and biodiversity loss and climate change. Why that's important? Because the policies which we are then using are different. So, if economy is essential, let's look to the essentials of how economy today works. We are living on market economies, producers and consumers met, and apparently we act rationally, even if this is pretty much irrational assumption, because the whole human behavior in all the history was irrational. Anyway, we are meeting on the markets where prices, signals are actually deciding the quantities which are then we facing and seeing as a result of the production. But what are the signals which we are sending on the market? Financial capital, overvalued, over-rewarded. Human capital, undervalued, under-rewarded. Natural capital, not valued, not rewarded at all. So if somebody thinks that we will get from that a society which will be economically, socially, and environmentally balanced, he or she should wake up. These are the signals which we are giving in the system. It would need to look like something like that. The economic system would need to be the function of the ecosystem, and the major problem are, of course, environmental externalities. These are, some are saying if you want to introduce anything environmental that this is additional cost. Wrong. Those costs are existing today. We are just not calculating them. We are acting like they would not exist. We are shifting them to the next generation or to the health system. So the system works like that, that we privatize the profits and the costs are to a large extent socialized. This is very nice UN-based statistic, which is telling you if you look to the growth in last a bit more than 20 years, you find out that production capital is nicely growing. That's actually how GDP is measured. Human capital, it's more or less on the same level, while the natural capital was depleting. So the conclusion is very simple. In the a bit more than last 20 years, we were growing because we were depleting natural capital and indebting future generations, full stop. SDGs, which are directly connected to natural resource management, are actually 12. So without that, you cannot deal with the situation. And if we look a bit broader, then we have just recently concluded a study on the resource use, biomass, fossil fuels, metals, non-metallic minerals, land and water. And here are just 2 slides of the essential results. In the last 50 years, global resource use has more than tripled. Per capita has almost doubled, which means that it's more or less connected to the economic growth, not so much to population growth. And the shocking fact is that the material productivity, the efficiency of the use of resources has from the year 2000 declined, even if it's growing in all the countries. Why so? Because majority of the products which you are now buying are produced now in the countries which are less resource efficient. Production shifted from Europe, Japan, to Indonesia, to China, to India. And that's, in essence, a serious problem about the resource consumption in the future. We have looked also to environmental impacts of the resource extraction and processing phase without the use, and we found out that 90% of global biodiversity loss and water stress is actually connected to resources, that 50% of global climate change are connected to resources, and even 1/3 of the pollution. What does that mean? If you are buying your car and parking it for the whole life, you have caused 1/3 of the pollution, because that was used for the production, extraction of those materials. The essential philosophy for the future, if we really want still to improve our well-being, and if we want to talk about growth, is that we need to decouple the economic growth and well-being from the resource use and from environmental impact. Going different way, it's simply impossible. That's the philosophy which is behind. That's leading me to something which you have already heard. That's the circular economy. Circular economy, it's actually an instrument to deliver this decoupling, and it should be seen as a kind of bigger picture of economic, societal, and cultural transformation to create an economy which is compliant with Sustainable Development Goals. Let us now connect that with the digitalization. The first law of Dr. Kranzberg of the 6 laws of technologies, it's pretty much telling you everything. Technology is neither good nor bad, nor it's neutral. So that's our challenge, which we have to address. The German Advisory Council on Global Change has clearly stated, because they are preparing the inputs for the German presidency, this will be one of the priorities, place digitalization in the service of global sustainability, we have to ensure that the digital revolution is orientated towards a common good and embedded in the strategy of sustainable development. Unless it is actively shaped, global digital change runs added risk to further increasing the threat to humankind's life support systems. If we now move to some examples which were already mentioned by Director General of digital economy as an enabler to circular economy. First, what I have to say is that digital and circular are on the same development path. Many of the circular ideas existed in the past, but we were not being able to deliver it in practice. First, about energy transition. Digitalization is key in the stability and security of decarbonized electricity grids. It has a major promise for carbon-neutral energy storage. Grids and storage are two crucial questions when it comes to energy. Empowering consumers, traceability, transparency, visibility. This is essential in the food and textile industry, essential also when it comes to chemicals. Consumers are well informed about our food choices, what does food contain, how our clothes are wear and produced, and even how genuine and respected are the workers' rights. All that is allowed by digitalization. Retaining materials and their value, virtualization, which you know well, it's a key tool for more efficient materials handling. Secondary materials production. We have done a calculation and found out that on the top of all energy measures, if you replace the linear economy with the circular economy, you can cut emissions in steel, plastic, aluminum, cement for additional 56%. Or if you want an example from the mobility, don't build new roads in the cities and make it larger, because mobility goes in different direction. Just adopt one simple decision. In 15 years, the private car will not be allowed anymore in the city, and you will solve all the problems. And by the way, you will cut the CO2 emissions with that approach for 70%. European car today, its used utility, it's 2%. The shared car today in Europe, it's approximately 40% utility. Then in the food system, which was also already mentioned, the precision farming. Precision farming is an excellent step ahead. But if you really want to make it circular, then don't sell pesticides. Sell the protection of the plant for hectare. Because in the first case, in the case of precision farming, those who are producing the chemicals are still incentivized to sell you more chemicals. If they will sell you the service, they will actually be incentivized in different direction. Suddenly, the pesticides used will be their cost because they will make profit from service. So these are the essential thoughts which we have to think about when we talk about those issues. Digital is useful also beyond circular economy. Good data leads to good decisions, better monitoring, real-time, geospatial, need for interoperability in Europe, citizen science to build awareness, and so on. Finally, just 3 slides about digital economy. Development should respect also circular economy rules. Again, some things which you have already heard. So the question is, how green is actually the ICT? And in the recent staff working document in the Commission, it was clearly written, then increase in VE and energy consumption, if not properly managed, could become a serious problem. Interesting is the assumption about how the energy consumption will move. In 2015, majority was linked to the consumer device use. In 10 years, majority will be linked to the data centers use. So if we want to see some of the data which are today connected with the ICT, 8 to 10% of European electricity consumption, 4% of carbon emissions. Data centers all over the world alone account around 2% of global GHG emissions, as much as traffic, air traffic, Energy used in blockchain, it's already causing serious problems. E-waste is the fastest growing waste source in European Union. To produce a mobile phone, 60 different metals are required, around 20 can currently be recycled. Only 26% of mobile phones are actually collected for reprocessing. 32 kilograms of raw materials are needed to produce a microchip, weighing only 2 grams. And finally, life of equipment has steadily decreased between 85 and 2015. The useful life of computer was reduced from 11 to 4 years. All this makes us worried, but all this has answers. All sectors should, of course, contribute in its fair share, fighting against climate change. ICT should be made carbon neutral, contributing to low carbon economy and circular economy and society. And of course, the rebound effect should be mitigated. Concerning the legislation, frankly, quite a lot already exists on EU level, but there are some things on which we will have to still look at, and John, following me, will later on address in the panel a bit more that in detail. So when it comes to regulation, it is pretty clear that business is not afraid of more regulation. They are afraid of unfairness, free riders, and uncertainty. They need predictability. But on the other hand, public utilities, public policymakers are responsible that the regulation is setting the right path in the future. To conclude, so towards sustainable digital future. In summary, digital will lead to massive improvements in efficiency, provision of goods and services. This can be either a push to a linear growth and consumption or a circular one. Digital transformation is not neutral, but it can and it should be a major part of the solution in the transition to a more sustainable economy and society. It is our urgent political task to create conditions needed to place digitalization at the service of sustainable development. ICT sector should target to become carbon neutral as soon as possible. And my personal advice would be, we urgently need a kind of digitalized circular economy roadmap and action plan, which would actually create the right path and organize the activities in our joint area in the right direction. Which are the major challenges which we are facing? This goes really to the bottom of the problems which we are all seeing. First, I firmly believe that our major problem is that political cycles, also the public and financial institutions, are all pretty much short-term minded. I have been member of 2 commissions and member of my government also for some years. We have never had a serious strategic debate, to be honest. This is now improving and getting better. But it's essential that we align short and long term. Second, the logic of consumerism and quantities and GDP fuel growth is actually the one which is really problematic. We will not reach our goal faster if we will walk in the wrong direction. And that's actually what GDP is today showing us. And finally, transition to a more sustainable economy and society will only be possible if it's just, fair and inclusive. We are currently failing there. We see that on the streets even of high-income countries. We see the young generation. By the way, Greta, which you have seen before, it's not in the first place the symbol of the awakened young generation. She is, of course. But she is in the first place the symbol of the failures of the generation which is now in power. And we should be ashamed that we need a 16-year kid to tell us that. So, transition to a more sustainable economy and society, it's unavoidable. Digital revolution will simply happen. Humans are supposed to be intelligent, so it's high time to prove it, so we have to fix a broken compass. My advice for the next Commission would be, SDGs should be North Star guiding your policies and behavior. We need an intergenerational agreement, and we need a program for future generations which will put sustainability first. This is 100% in line with the SDGs, full stop. We need more circularity also in global governance. We need sharing sovereignty instead of owing, and the best example for that is, of course, European Union, because a few decades ago, we have understood that by sharing sovereignty, we can avoid the worst. And on a global level, we are in front of exactly the same challenge. If we don't start to cooperate more wars and conflicts, that will be the case. And Europe, it's not only blue with yellow stars, and what should our role in that be? It's a rainbow, blue for freedom and democracy, red for social values, green for the protection of environment, yellow for the culture. We will hardly picture Europe as the center of the world, but we should do everything that Europe remains the center of the dreams of all the people of the world. And that should be exactly also the goal in the planet in digitalization, because we know, we care, and we can. Finally, circular economy, it's not a new concept, by the way. It's the oldest concept in the earth. All nature is organized based on the principles of the circular economy, and nothing is lost and everything has its purpose. This is why it would make common sense to embrace finally that and behave accordingly. The only question which we have to talk about is this: do we agree that the humans are also part of the nature, or we are invasive species? If we need somebody to help us to answer that, I would advise you that we look to the advice of Hercule Poirot, the most famous Belgian detective. Don't ever confuse that he's the French, because he gets really mad about that. But when he was once asked why he is speaking about himself always in the third person, he replied something like that: if one is such a genius like myself, it is very important to establish a healthy distance towards myself. That's actually how the behavior of humans in the context of nature should start to be turned off. And if you will not convince finally anybody with that, then please take the advice of Professor Guy McPherson, who was saying, if you think the economy is more important than environment and health, try holding your breath while counting your money. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Potočnik, thank you for this inspiring speech. You're right, we have to respect Mother Nature and learn from her. She's shown us how we do things. She's always done it in a circular way. Everything is reused. And this is just great. You set the stage for this wonderful discussion, which you're going to be a part of. So please take a seat.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. And I surprised myself taking notes while you were speaking. So this really says a lot about how interesting your presentation was. But let's now, Bralica, with your agreement, let's dive in our first panel of Digital4Planet session. This panel is called Digital4Climate. And we will hear from our panelists how ICT contributes to sustainability goals.
And why don't we introduce the rest of the panelists to begin our discussion. We invite now to the stage Don Tucillo, Senior Vice President of Global Industry and Government Affairs with Schneider Electric.
I also invite Mrs. Ludmila Klimok, CEO of Orange Romania.
We also invite Iulian Stanciu, the CEO of EMAG. Welcome.
And because this is a tech conference via video connection, we are calling now Marion Verles, CEO of Gold Standard Foundation from Switzerland. We should see her promptly on the screen.
And my first question, if you allow me, Mihai, I want to ask the first question. I'd like to ask Mr. Tucillo, we just heard this passionate call from Mr. Potočnik about circularity, and actually your company received the Circulus 2019 award from the World Economic Forum. So tell us, how can we build more circularity into Europe's economy from your experience?
Hi, thank you very much. Hi, I'm John Tucillo from Schneider Electric. And being that we are a global French company, I guess the quick and easy answer to that is we drink our own champagne. The things that we do at Schneider Electric are equal to the kinds of things we profess into the industry. So for example, eco-design is a very key part of our culture. What that means is that how is it that we can design and build our products in a way that use the least amount of raw materials as possible? But it doesn't stop there. You look at some of the things that we apply, and many do apply, in how do you allow circularity into your supply chain. So that uses digital technologies to go back and do lot traceability for sure, but all the way down to the raw materials level. And then how is it that you can change your behavioral practices as a company? So some of the things that we do is things such as our own buyback programs, where we actually harvest the technology that we ship. And back to circularity, we remanufacture, we extract the materials and reuse them wherever possible. We also have kind of a cultural thing within our company, which is called the Society and Sustainability Barometer. So everybody in Schneider Electric, from management level right on up, part of our performance is gauged upon our individual contributions to sustainability, but also as a group level. So how is it that we are a more sustainable company?
One quick follow-up. Does it cost you more to be circular?
It depends. If you're looking at the big picture, no, it really doesn't. Because then we are able to recapture so much of our raw materials, but the practices that it employs become far more effective, far more efficient, even in our data centers, but I can talk more about that later.
Thank you so far for your answer. I was watching Madame Burles. She was jumping, eager to intervene. We are going to see her here, but I also see her at this monitor. I'm going to use this one. Also, before everything else, please remember, Slido, Digital4Planet is the code to log in for this session, and we are going to use it shortly. So, coming back to you, Madame Burles. The gold standard was born and built on carbon credits, carbon markets, but now we have a Paris Agreement. Do you think these carbon economies are still relevant to take into consideration? Should we tweak a little bit the system? Should we adapt it to the digital economy that we live in?
Thanks for the great question, and thanks for having me. Just before I cover your question, I just want to say that it's a great pleasure to be able to join this conference via video conference call. I think it's a really powerful yet relatively simple example of how technology can reduce carbon emissions. I didn't have to fly from Zurich to your location for this event. I can do this online with a very limited carbon footprint. I think this should become common practice in our sphere. So to your question, yes, carbon markets are going through a major transformation. The Paris Agreement has changed the way carbon markets are organized, are structured. The Kyoto era is now almost behind us, and we're entering an era where carbon markets are much more decentralized, bottom-up, as national or subnational. Every country now is expected to report back on progress. We also see a blurring of the lines between what we used to consider compliance mechanisms and voluntary mechanisms, with voluntary units now being eligible in compliance schemes. So what is the role of technology there? I think technology can play a really critical role. I think it's going to be critical to ensure that all those different markets can interoperate, can operate between each other, and that the units that are being issued and traded in one market can become fungible in another market. With the growth in complexity in the new generation of carbon markets, a number of risks are going to be more important going forward. For example, the risk of double counting, but also risks associated with fraud. And we'll see technology as a solution to overcome those risks by enabling the networking of carbon markets. There are two specific examples that I'd like to cite where we think technology can play an important role. We consider that technology can play an important role upstream as well as downstream. Upstream, we think about the monitoring, reporting, and verification process. It's the controls that are in place to make sure that 1 ton of CO2 that is issued in a market is real and measurable.
Oh.
And so this is where Internet of Things, artificial intelligence and machine learning can play a very powerful role to entirely digitize the process and make it seamless to account for carbon reductions. On the other side, on the downstream
Okay.
side, we're seeing interesting technologies to expand the reach of markets.
Madam Verst, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I had a problem on stage understanding everything that Madam Verst answered. I don't know if it's the case only with me. I hope the audience received very well the ideas that we put here.
I'd like to...
Please, Ralica.
Thank you, Mihai. I'd like to turn to Ms. Klimok and ask her, we heard a lot about e-waste, about our favorite mobile phones and how we kind of can't wait for the next new edition of our iPhone. But we heard basically that that is contributing to e-waste and it's really damaging the environment. So what is your company doing to encourage people to think about more green behavior?
Thank you. Yes, indeed, the phone is becoming something similar like air. Yeah, we cannot live anymore without internet, like we cannot do without air. What we try to do at Orange is to embed the idea of circularity in the very beginning of our processes design and our offers. For instance, talking about recycling of the phones, so mobile phones, different generations from simple phones to 4G now. We collect just during last years, we have collected more than 10 million phones, devices across Orange footprint, and this quantity, this volume will be doubled by 2020. And here, I must say that Romania is keeping a key leading role in this project. To just give you an example, for last 3 years we have collected more than 1.3 million devices out of a bit more than 4 million, which we have brought on the market, so roughly 1/3. I see that we are a bit higher than average.
Above the average, yes, that's good.
And I must say that at peak we were around 34%, and it is a lot of challenges coming across the process. So it's really important on each stage of device chain to get incentives to key stakeholders, starting from vendors of devices, operators or retailers who are selling them, then recycling operators and customers, to give customers as well incentive and awareness of what they can do. And I must say that we have a very good engagement with customers, particularly with young generation, as it was mentioned. And one of the example of awareness boost, I would say, which we are using on top of incentives given in the offer, it's simply, animation of collecting the devices during music festivals, for instance. Last summer we have collected during festival here in Romania 1,500 devices. So if you plan to come to vacation, or part of your vacation to spend at music festival in Romania, you can bring your phone and recycle it. Other example I would bring with repair, which is sometimes perceived by operator as a pain point, because this is the moment when customer is not happy. But we fundamentally believe that we need to be close to our customers at the important moment of his life with Orange. And we have in our own shops care centers, and we ensure end-to-end process, including the repair and after sales. Roughly 200,000 repairs has been provided only during last year. And of course, digitalization of processes and interactions with customers. So key is to bring the as good as we can digital experience through digital channels to our customers. And we see that the demand is big, and the appetite for digital interactions is growing, which is bringing a lot of efficiency, a lot of, again, resource consumption decrease, a lot of, of course, we talk about paperless processes and sales or care processes. Maybe we can give you just one figure. during the last 2 years, we have doubled number of share of interactions with our customers through digital channels. Now half of the interactions are done digitally, and we see it's growing exponentially. So still quite a lot to be done, just half. So I see it more as a half full glass than versus half empty. Still a lot of demand again coming from customer, and it means for us as well that we can concentrate our resources on what is essential for customers, not necessarily, you know, spending resources on basic things which are taking a lot of resources.
Okay, having the customer in mind and talking about the habits that the digital economy have created recently, we are definitely going to talk about e-commerce, a thing that didn't even exist like 20 years ago, let's say. I'm looking at Mr. Stanciu. He's a rising and flourishing example of the success of a business dealing with e-commerce. But sir, our angle here is, what good does it e-commerce towards the environment versus the classical way of doing shopping?
Yeah, I think e-commerce is not helping the consumers only to save time and money. I think e-commerce is helping also the sustainability. According to a study made last year by the Bucharest University of Economic Studies, e-commerce is reducing the carbon emissions by optimizing the fuel consumption. So the courier routes are shorter than the distance traveled by individuals to the shops. And according to the study, at a volume, the Romanian volume of 67 million orders in 2017, the saving was 40,000 tons of carbon, or saving more than 100,000 trees per year.
Excellent. I am tempted to ask Mr. Stanciu if he can do better than that, but I think we all agree that from the orange answer and the EMAG answer that all these examples are actually a good beginning of thinking circular in a digital economy. What do you think, Ralița?
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to add another perspective also. Want to go back to Ms. Verls and ask you about the financial sector, and basically, can technology help shift financial flows to more sustainable efforts?
Sure, I think it's important to start by saying that technology alone is not going to shift the financial sector. We need much more than that. I think, however, technology can help with two issues that sustainable investment opportunities currently face. I think on one hand, those investment opportunities are riskier than others, than mainstream investments. And on the other hand, those opportunities are delivering benefits, environmental benefits, social benefits that are not currently valued. And this is where technology can help reduce the risk profile by making it easier to assess those investment opportunities and to make it easier to transparently measure and report on the positive externalities that they're delivering. And I think that can go a long way in channeling finance to those. It's not going to be enough. However, I think a range of other actions are going to be required. I just want to mention the work we published last year in a report called Navigating Blockchain and Climate Action Report, published with our partners of the Climate Ledger Initiative, where we analyzed where the troika of Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and distributed ledger technology can help accelerate the disbursement of climate finance. And so there are a number of interesting levers that can be pulled, but obviously we also need regulators and the private sector to join the movement. Technology alone is not going to do it.
Ms. Verls, thank you. It's important, of course, how to best use the money and technology to
Talking about
finance.
money and technology, when you get big above one point, you start to finance and support around you an ecosystem of smaller businesses. I'm looking again at Mrs. Klimok because I know you have Orange Fab. Yeah, it's a program to support startups. My question is, how much emphasis you put on sustainability when you choose to support and finance one business, one startup or another? And how do you mix, you know, environment, the care for the environment, and this gaze into the future, and the way you choose to grow a business, a small one?
I think that ultimately the main idea in this big objective of sustainability is also equal solidarity and doing things together. Of course, we are providing connectivity as I would say a certain digital backbone for the economy, but on top of this, I think telco players should play a key role of builder and domain pylon for the ecosystem building. And here I can. You have mentioned Orange Fab. Actually, it is an accelerator program which we use to work for startups. Particularly, we were using this program for smart city, smart projects. I can mention Alba Iulia as one of them. So this was our pilot project, which is very rich. We brought more than 14 use cases in Alba Iulia together with startups. And basically, you know, of course, it is going from standard solutions, which you can see, like smart lighting, which are very obvious and the benefit is very obvious, to a solution which was also integrated now in public transport Wi-Fi projects in smart cities in several cities in Romania, like Timișoara, Bucharest, Alba Iulia, of course, Cluj, Arad, Iași. Where we integrate within Wi-Fi and public Wi-Fi also air monitoring system, which was developed by a startup with access for public authorities and for general public. By this contributing to the awareness of people, of the impact that they are producing on the environment in the city. A nice example was quite a big buzz was produced at the first school day. Yep. When we were monitoring it in Alba Iulia, when you see that number of cars suddenly is growing, and this is raising the awareness of public authorities, of businesses, and of simple consumers.
And that is quite amazing what you're doing there. And I wanted to have Mr. Tusillo respond to that. Your thoughts on how your industry can help circularity, and can help in the smart city model.
Sure. Before I get there, I want to compliment one of your points. It was really very, very good. There's actually 3 other transformations that are driving that kind of behavior. So the Orange program is fabulous, but there's 3 other transformations that are starting to happen on a global scale, and it started right here in Europe. For example, companies now are oftentimes being evaluated inclusive of their sustainability plans. So even if it's not officially a metric, if you will, yet, the behavior is there. And so being able to value companies inclusive of their sustainability plans, it's beginning to happen. And I think as a global community, the more that we push those kinds of behaviors, the better. Another fundamental that's beginning to happen is something kind of called green bonding, which is where financial institutions, and again, it started here in Europe, are looking for those special ways to have low interest, low cost funding available to those like your Orange program that are looking to fuel these kinds of things. The third could kind of be loosely called green funding. And this is also a phenomenon that started here in Europe, where there are very special programs that are very selective and target, where they think the R&D efforts, like you mentioned, can be accelerated, yes, through public-private funding, but then they have metrics against that for how to measure that return. So there's 3 phenomena that are beginning to happen, some officially, some unofficially, that's starting to sweep some changes throughout Europe, and I'm hoping it extends.
Thank you very much. The advantage is that the next panel consists also of you, so we'll have a chance to add more on that.
Sorry.
I want to thank Madam Verls for now, for being with us, and inviting to our discussion another opinion, Ralica.
That's right. Before we move on to the second topic of our panel, which will be on how the EU can make ICT greener, we would like to hear now from the German Minister of the Environment, Svenja Schulze. Let's listen.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to send warm wishes to you all at the Digital Assembly 2019 in Bucharest. It is very unfortunate that I cannot be with you today. Bringing together the issues of digitalization and environmental protection is something that is very close to my heart. This is why I am delighted about the theme of your discussions, Digital4Planet. I would like to thank the European Commission and the Romanian EU presidency for this initiative. If we continue the digital transformation as it is, it will stoke the flames of today's ecological and social problems. More energy and resources will be consumed for smart devices, and online trade will generate more traffic and packaging. However, I strongly believe we can use digitalization to create new opportunities for a sustainable future. It can be a fire extinguisher for our flashpoints, so to speak. It also offers huge opportunities for environmental protection. It networks renewable energies and supports the energy transition. It can organize mobility with fewer emissions, and it makes a real circular economy possible. However, this will not simply happen of its own accord. We have to shape the digital transformation in a way that ensures the necessary reversal in trends. At the start of May, I presented a number of proposals for this. My key points for a digital policy agenda for the environment. To name just a few examples, I want to create standards for efficient data centers and a European right to repair. And I want to support startups that use environmental data to develop innovations for protection of the climate and conserving species. In 50 lighthouse projects, we will demonstrate how artificial intelligence can be programmed to support environmental protection. You can find these key points on my ministry's websites. Ladies and gentlemen, the megatrends of today, globalization, digitalization, and climate change, they do not stop at national borders. Sustainable digitalization can only succeed at European level. Digitalization that puts the focus on people and the environment can become a new guiding principle for Europe and can create advantages for Europe as a location for industry. Together, we can develop standards that can be applied worldwide for a livable planet. As the Environment Minister, I will use Germany's presidency of the EU in the second half of 2020 to work with our European partners to drive forward a European vision and measures for sustainable digital transformation. I wish you all a fruitful discussion. The theme of Digital4Planet shows that you are in tune with the vital topics of the times. All the best to you in Bucharest.
And our thanks to the German Minister of Environment, Svenja Schulze. And now we move to the next topic, how Europe can make its ICT sector greener.
And I like to see that our audience is already engaged in the Slido program. My success of this presentation is measured on how interactive you are on Slido, so please, at least as a personal favor, do that. I see that we already have an answer. We should have the answers on the far right or over there when you see me now. Would you consider keeping your smartphone more than 5 years? well, maybe yes, maybe not, but we give you 2 incentives for that. You'll have continuous upgrades for the software, and the smartphone itself would be easier to repair. So, under these circumstances, 89% of you said yes, and this is a good, you know, a trampoline to the second part of the session.
I love this answer, and I think, Mr. Potočnik, you would love this, this answer. Does it surprise you?
Not really. Actually, I think that what would be essential here is to organize a process. So, to agree in the Commission that about a program how to decarbonize the ICT sector in the shortest period as possible. And this process should be organized in a way that you have all the stakeholders on board, that it's inclusive, so that you get something which the ownership at the end of the day will be shared. Because if you don't do that, you simply don't create something which is sustainable. But if I would touch just one thing which we have discussed before, because I think it's essential, and I was not actually able to comment before. I think when we talk about circular economy, we have to understand it in the proper way. So, circular economy in one sentence, it's how to keep various kinds of resources in production and consumption system as long as possible, and how to keep the value of those resources as high as possible. So when we talk a lot about recycling, waste which it's following, but you know, when you talk about recycling, the job it's not done well, because recycling is, in the theory of circular economy, the worst of the good. So when you are forced to recycle, I'm not saying that it's not good. When you are forced to recycle, it means that you have used the resources. So in the first place, it's about reduction, repairing, refurbishing, remanufacturing, and so on. So there are different steps which you have to consider and think when you deal with that. And John mentioned at the beginning the design as one of the most important things, which I would agree. I think that design and business models are core of the name of the game. But one thing which we would really need to think about is the potential of the extended producer responsibility. Because today the situation is approximately like that. Producer is responsible for the product until it's sold. Consumer until it's used, consumed. And then it's actually society who is responsible for what is happening with the waste. How they organize that, they organize it that private companies are dealing with that, it's another question. But it's actually society. But imagine that at the end of use, responsibility of the product which was produced would go back to the producer. How would the product from the very beginning be designed differently? How would the business models look differently if this would be the burden of the producer itself? So we have a lot of things to discuss which have major potential.
Right, but there is another catch, you know. We are tempted to see the hardware part of the ICT industry, but what are you doing with the invisible part of the ICT industry that consumes a lot of energy? How can we make that greener, operating the ICT industry?
Regulate it.
One answer from there. Maybe you can go faster on the panel.
So that's actually right in my sweet spot, to be honest with you. The IT industry, about 7 years ago, was recognizing this phenomenon. And we took it upon ourselves to work on something that you think about in the context of a massive scissor effect. How is it that you can increase your compute throughput, but while reducing your environmental impact? Because we recognized that there certainly wasn't even enough electricity on the planet to be able to fund what we thought was going to happen with the digitization of the global economy, and this largely started to happen. So many of us came together and we said, we got to come up with a way to reduce that energy consumption per compute throughput, if you will. Through an organization called the Green Grid, we produced a very simple, easy-to-use metric called PUE, Power Utilization Effectiveness. And what PUE did for the first time ever, it gave data center owner-operators the ability to be able to quantify what their energy consumption was to the throughput, to, as you said, the invisible part that actually makes the digital economy work. But that wasn't all. So for the first time ever, we had a methodology to quantify, but that wasn't going to be enough. We then came together and did some really phenomenal best practices that we started to see a nosedive in what the actual cost to compute became. I can give you great detail, there's not enough
Excellent.
time.
That's a great, but let's hear the Romanian story here, because I see Mr. Stanciu already has the microphone, and maybe a quick reaction from Ludmila after that, please.
Yeah, I have a few points that we come up building them bottom up. One is pretty interesting. We started to expand the infrastructure of the parcel lockers. And we aim within 4 or 5 years to reach 90% of the urban population within 5-minute walk from home or from work. Those lockers are reducing also carbon emissions. And there is a study made by 2 professors from Warsaw University last year. And they're saying that because also the courier are feeding the lockers with more parcels once, also because the consumers have the lockers within a walking distance from their work or home, the carbon emissions are 20.5% lower than from the case where product is delivered at home. So if those networks of lockers can be installed faster and producing those lockers can be done cheaper and can be helped by EU regulations and EU funds, that will be pretty helpful. For example, in Poland, there is already a network of 7,500 lockers.
Okay.
There are countries with less than 100 with a similar population. So there is a lot of room to expand. Second, we started to measure the level, the volume of air within packages. Anyway, we are building the packages out of recycled material, but there is a lot of wasted packages, and also the couriers are transporting volumes, not weight. And because volume is transported, we need to reduce this volume by reducing the level of air within the packages. And we started to measure this. Imagine at the beginning it was plus 50% we were transporting air. And we started to implement technologies, a lot of machine learning in order to put more products within the same package. Sounds simple, but operating a plus 100,000 square meter warehouse is not so easy. And after that, we started to, by measuring volumetry of the product, we started to look at building custom boxes in order to reduce the level of air down to 10%. By doing this, also the boxes, they fit in the lockers. Today, only 74% of the parcels fit in a parcel locker. And our goal for next year is to reach 91%. We calculated that by doing all those improvements. And also the level of the materials used for the packaging will reduce. And there is one point about the circular economy and how e-commerce works. We are looking most of the time at e-commerce at the B2C, but there is also the C2C part of e-commerce, which usually happen inside the same city or inside the same region. By building this infrastructure of parcel lockers, people will sell used products and they will prolong the life of the used products more. Today, the products are sold, the durable consumer goods are sold more than 3 times after the product is sold as new. So the C2C economy is also helping the circular economy.
Okay, to sum up, maybe the digital economy has in itself the power to efficientize itself. I mean, to become more efficient by itself using AI and stuff like that. I suppose in telecommunications, every new generation of devices are more consumption aware, let's say. We should wrap up the panel, but maybe, you know, I really loved that final question that we prepared. Do you want to do that, the flash answers? If you promise to answer in 10 questions each, We have a challenge for you.
Yeah, but really 2 sentences.
Right.
Just imagine.
Please, Ralitza, yeah. You set the scene.
If you were elected the Commissioner President this fall of the European Union, what would you do to
green
make
the
the transition
ICT
to sustainability? How would you do it? And who would like to
You know,
take that?
there is a conundrum. We have to be green, but we have to be competitive because the world is big. China, Russia, US are out there competing for the same attention.
Without stifling regulations, but also
Absolutely.
doing...
10 seconds answers, please. Let's play.
What would be your priority?
I would say probably reviving the digital leadership for Europe, and here focus on research and development, support programs on research and development, particularly on these very important subjects, artificial intelligence, IoT, cybersecurity, and then encouraging companies, small and big, be part of this co-construction and co-innovation, co-building. And I must say also encourage investments, public, private investment in this future-proof networks.
All right. Maybe shorter, Mr. Tussilo or Mr. Stanciu, whoever.
Thank you. As e-commerce is contributing to the sustainability and is reducing the carbon consumption, I think e-commerce and technology should be encouraged to develop. And I would put the digital single market for e-commerce development on top of the priorities.
Great.
Mr. Dancila.
So first, I'm not sure how legal that is since I'm an American, but let me answer the question. I would look to apply what we've learned in other sectors to get the ball rolling. The IT industry has made over 400% improvements in 5 years. FinTech has been applying these same principles for about 15 years. We should take what we've learned in other sectors and apply it more broadly and applicably in Europe.
Professor, mission impossible for you, 10 seconds.
Commission has ideal chance to be on the right side of the history, create a program for the young generations because we have indebted them environmentally and socially, and for the rest of you, don't wait for the leadership, be the leaders.
All right, great.
All right, what an enriching conversation.
Absolutely. We thank you all and we invite to take your seats back in the audience. And I think this concludes a very, very dynamic and interesting session, Ralitza.
That's right, Mihai. We've heard a lot of good arguments of why.
Thank you very much. And we have more good news because we finished the plenary session with good news. We have a coffee break coming, 15 minutes for that, but there are plenty of reasons to return.
That's right. We are going to broaden our discussion about how Europe can lead not just in environmental matters, but also in the global digital economy. So lots of food for thought.
For thought.
Grab a snack and a coffee.
Coffee break, 15 minutes. See you back here.